Alright, so, we've done a great job. I think let's get into some development now. So, let's look at the site. I'm just going to make something up that we can do, something simple. And I think we'll start with a block. So, a block is one of these things right here. This is like a box. It's the course overview block. Recently accessed courses block. And then these are other little blocks over here. And it can be even more easier to see if we turn the editing of the page on or customizing. You can see we have a cog in each place. This is actually called the learning plans block here. This is called the course overview block. Here's the timeline block. So let's add a new block type and add it to the dashboard. Dashboard is this page when it says my. And basically what would happen is we would click add a block here, and we want a new block to show up in here, something that we are going to develop together. And what I want to do is put the block just somewhere here on the front of the page, and let's say it's going to list all the users in the site. And we can even set an admin setting for the block, and the admin setting, if we enable it, will do something. Maybe change the way that the block looks. So let's go ahead and do that in the next lectures. So to create a block, let's Google it. So we'll start with that. And we got a couple links here. You've got one page here that's kind of the guide for front-end people, like admins and people that are going to use the blocks. And definitely important to read through this, understand it, and watch the video and stuff there as well. But we are more interested in developing, so we're going to go further down and click the developer link instead. And this is going to tell us how to code the block up. And there's just a few important files that we need. There's 4 files that make up the most simple blocks. And actually, instead of following this chute, I think it might be just easier to go ahead and we'll just copy in the 4 main files that we need from the HTML block, because it'll be simple. It'll be almost exactly what we need. So every plugin needs a version file. Okay, let's change it to be what we need. It's block test block, and the component is block test block. So these are all the different places we need to update. We need a version number, because whenever this gets updated, Moodle is able to run arbitrary PHP code and also add database schema, like new tables and columns. So we need to, that's just being aware of what that is, and we'll show that later when we make an upgrade and run some PHP code. And this number is the Moodle version that we need. It can be any low version, it can be basically any number, so that we have a lower version of Moodle than we're running right now. So for example, this one is actually pretty high. It's a pretty recent version, but that will work fine. What else do we need? Well, we need this file, the main class that's going to extend the block base. So we can copy that from HTML, put that in. And what do we need to do? Well, we can get rid of all this stuff. I mean, this is all custom to the HTML block. We really don't need any of that. I don't want any of that. I just want the basics, We do need to get content function. That's like kind of the main function. So we definitely will need that, and we'll need the init. That's the 2 functions we need. Let's get rid of all this. I do want to make this check. This check will say that we don't set the content twice. So that looks good. We get rid of all this stuff. And other than that, let's set this content to something. And I mean, as you could see here, when the HTML block does it. There's two parts of the content that we set in a block. We set the text and we set the footer. And those are the two different parts of the block. So we can't see it now, but we'll see it later. So let's set text to this is the text, and we will set the footer. This is the footer, so we have something there. Cool. And we can get rid of this, make sure that we have the right names everywhere, especially here as well in the get string. And by the way, let's create that string because we will need that. So that's when we need a directory called lang and another directory in there for our English language and another directory or another file in there called block test block. This will have the lang strings for our test block. And let's get the boilerplate code that we would want for that, like something like this. Looks good. And I will put that here. Test block. And well, we don't have any of this stuff, so we get rid of that. And all we need is this stuff right here. These are the strings that are going to show up when we're going to add it. So we'll put the name in here, add a new test block. Oh, whoops. Test block to dashboard. Test block. Cool. Plugin name test block. So that should mean now that we need to obviously rename the class as well, the test block. All this should work together. It's going to get the plugin name as the title, and the plugin name is going to be test block right there. So that is looking pretty good. We're missing one file as well that we need, which will be the capabilities file. And yeah, I think we'll copy it from here. So let's make a new directory, db, and it goes in a file called access. And what this file does is it determines or lets Moodle know who is allowed to create this block, edit this block. And you have two places you can create and edit it: on the dashboard, my, and on the rest of the site, which is just Moodle site. So that's why we have different permissions in each place. Let's also just copy that and make sure we have renamed this everywhere, because we need the permissions for our block, not something else. Then look, we're an admin now in our development site, so this is not too important. It will be when we want to add a block and have special permissions for teachers and other people, but for now we will just add this so that we have some permissions in there. And with that, we should be able to update our code and put that block in there. So right now, we have put some code in Moodle. We've put a new block in, but Moodle hasn't had a chance to look at this yet. Nothing has changed in the database. In fact, if we see, when we refresh, it'll tell you that there's a new plugin here waiting to be installed. So before we do that, let's actually see what's going to happen after we upgrade the Moodle database. Well, a lot of things will happen. Moodle will basically pass all this code in here and these basic files and put the fact that there's a new block into the database. One place that will change is the blocks table. So this is just a table that has one row for each type of block. And you can see them all here. I mean, they pretty much match up one-to-one with the files here. So if we order by like name, activity modules, activity results, admin bookmarks, each block has a row in here, and just some basic settings, I guess, like whether the block is going to be visible at all in the site. But we can't see our block in there. Test block is just not there. It would show up, right here somewhere. So let's look out for that. That'll be one thing that changes when we do the install. And we can run this upgrade now. Uh-oh, error. You see how this is really slow to run the upgrade when you click in the front end like this. Missing main block class file. So we've definitely done something wrong. Oh, this was the wrong name. So, okay. It's good when Moodle has helpful error messages like that. Not always the case. Block test block. That should help. And actually, I also want to show you, running the upgrade through the UI is slow, especially when you've got a lot of plugins to update, or there's going to be like a lot of PHP code running. It's better to run it from the command line when we can, especially because like your request here can time out. Like you can time out on the server side, can time out on the client side. Oh, so click and continue actually just did run the upgrade there, so that's fair enough. But I'll show the upgrade from the command line later. Cool, so we can continue here. And let's look what it did. We're back to our site. Back on like the admin index page. Let's go to the dashboard. Add block. We should be able to see it. Test block. And where does it go? I think it goes up here. This is the text, this is the footer. Sweet. That looks good. Let's also see what it did in the database. So in the blocks table, we can see now that it is a row there, for example. So that looks good. It's also a block instance. So you can see here that there's an instance of the block on the dashboard. And that's the one we're seeing here. If we add the block somewhere else, like into a course or into the site admin page or somewhere, then that'll be a new instance of the block. So this blocks table is for just the main declaring that there is a block called test block, and instances will tell you each time you instantiate that somewhere in the site.